Now, you're very welcome, Max. So we are going to turn to the weekend's GA in a moment with Colm Boyle. Before we do that and get into the nuts and bolts of the action, we do want to acknowledge and sum up the wider context surrounding the Ulster final. So a certain queasiness on our part, because on the one hand, this is deeply private, deeply distressing family matter with young children involved, and we're acutely aware of that. On the other hand, it has now become very much a public matter with several strands. So as things stand, Rory Gallagher, in so much as we can ascertain, is still the Derry football manager. In his own words on Friday, he was standing back as opposed to standing down from proceedings yesterday. All of this, of course, is in light of the allegations made by his ex-wife, Nicola Gallagher, on Facebook last week. So a couple of things. Nicola Gallagher, on the back of her Facebook post, spoke to the Sunday Independent yesterday. Now, in the interview, she largely reflected on the week that was, as opposed to expanding on the allegations against her husband. So she talked about her nervousness ahead of posting on Facebook. She said she was humbled by the response, overwhelmed by the support. She said, for instance, "I feel so heartened by the response because I'm not the type of person who likes any kind of attention. I'm naturally quite a shy person. I don't use social media. The last time I used Facebook was 3 or 4 years ago." She talked at length as well about her upset at being away from her children currently. She said, "Sometimes I feel like they're not mine anymore, that I've been cut out of their lives. I reared those children. When he was off being a superstar with the GAA, for them to be taken away from me really hurts. Every day without them breaks me." And she says that her issues with alcohol, which she added she has been addressing and have addressed, that they have been weaponised against her. And she felt, on the whole, compelled to speak out publicly. And she said, in her words, that this was her last resort. Rory Gallagher, for his part, made a statement last week through his legal team. So in that statement, he never engaged specifically with his ex-wife's allegations, did not confirm or deny. He called them, quote, serious allegations. He said the allegations against him have been investigated and dealt with. And he said he has been granted a full residence order in respect of their 3 children, and that he would be making no further comment. As for the authorities, the PSNI confirmed it had investigated the allegations against Rory Gallagher, and that last year in January of 22 and in June of 22, files were passed to the PPS, which is the northern equivalent of the DPP here in the Republic, and it was deemed that there was insufficient evidence to proceed. Now, just to address a newsworthy aspect of Nicola Gallagher's interview in the Sunday Independent yesterday, her father, Jerry Rooney, sent an email which was seen by the Sunday Independent to Derry County Board on the 25th of May last year, outlining his daughter's alleged abuse. And as the piece said yesterday, he received no reply from Derry County Board. The Sunday Independent contacted the County Board for clarity on this specific issue. No clarity was forthcoming yesterday. So to that end, as things stood yesterday, we didn't know who had seen the email in Derry. We didn't know if there were protocol in place or if there was a degree of being caught on the hop. We didn't know how it was handled. We didn't know the Derry County Board's rationale was in sticking by Rory Gallagher. We didn't know if they had discussed the situation. And indeed, Joe Molloy in his column yesterday talked about being in touch with several board members yesterday morning, he wrote, who are equally enraged. He had said he was enraged himself. So they said they were equally enraged. They had no idea this had been done, as in the email had not been responded to or discussed. And he said they were unaware, the board members to Joe Molloy, unaware of the allegations until they read Nicola's anguished Facebook posts last week. So as of this evening then, Derry GAA have commented on the situation. They say, I quote their press release, "It was reported in the weekend media that Derry GAA did not respond to an email relating to these allegations, which was reportedly sent on May 25th of 2022. We have rigorously checked our email system. We have no record of receiving any such email then or at any time subsequent to that. We have not been able to verify the address the email was sent to, but we believe it may have been sent to a defunct administrator address. Derry GAA was unaware of these allegations until they emerged last week. So that is the Derry GAA response today, clearing up or giving their side of the email part of the Sunday Independent interview with the Gallagher family yesterday, Nicola Gallagher's father. As to what happens over the next couple of weeks remains to be seen. Incredibly difficult situation, deeply private, and now also very public. So that is the latest on Rory Gallagher, Nicola Gallagher and the Derry County Board. So, to the football over the weekend that was. At Clonus, Derry are back-to-back Ulster champions, 115 to Armagh's 18 points after extra time, and Derry were 3-1 winners on penalties. Still very strange to say that kind of a sentence, but 3-1 winners on penalties. Meanwhile, Kerry and Galway won their provincial finals by 14 points each. The Dubs upped the ante, 13 Leinster titles in a row, beating Louth by 21 points, 5-21 to 15 points at Croke Park yesterday. Very happy to say four-time All-Star with Mayo, Colm Boyle, is on the line. Good evening.
Joe, how are you doing?
Talk about a contrast. We have Dublin in the last boring days of pre-season, bit of a trot, and then we have Derry and Armagh living and dying by every bouncing ball yesterday.
Yeah, such a contrast, Joe. I suppose 1 out of 4 isn't bad, maybe, to get that competitiveness. But
it's not great.
No, it's not great. No, we'll probably talk about a bit more about that again. But I suppose from just an entertainment point of view, it was great to get something that we could cling on to and get a small bit excited about. I didn't think it was a brilliant game, and we'll probably come to that a bit more as well. But any day you get a bit of extra time, drama, and then obviously the drama that comes to penalty shootouts, you'll take that any day of the week, considering what we had to watch in Dublin, Louth, and obviously the weekend before as well.
So when you say not a brilliant game, clearly there was lots of drama and entertainment. You're talking about the quality?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. The quality, just the way it played out. I think the first half especially, I thought, Joe, was drab enough. I think it was very similar set up to what we saw in the Ulster final last year with Derry and Donegal. A lot of slow build-up attacks, a lot of long bouts of phases of possession. And I think Derry win the throw-in, Joe, and they hold the ball for something like 4 minutes before they get a shot away from Shane McGuigan. They get a score from that. And that was almost a signal of what was to come for the rest of the half. I was very surprised with Armagh that they allowed, considering they had the wind at their backs, that they allowed Derry really to just be really comfortable to hold the ball for them long bouts of possession. And the most surprising aspect was me that they were allowing Derry have possession from their own kickouts. I think it took to about 30 minutes into the game before they actually pushed up on a Derry kickout, and then they won 2 quick ones in a row and got 2 scores from that. So, you know, I think when Armagh look back on that, even if that was what they were set up to do before the game, I think they needed to look at the conditions. They needed to look at having the wind in the first half and being a bit braver and attacking Derry. I think they let Derry settle into the game very, very easy. And I think they only turned over Derry twice in that first half, Joe. I mean, you considering Derry had up on 70% possession, the amount of times and chances you have there to make tackles and turnovers and get in their faces, and they never really did it. So I felt that's why the first half was drab enough. Second half got a bit better. I think both teams came out a bit and, you know, kind of went at it a small bit more, and there was really good bouts of play in that second half and from there on in. But yeah, look, it's very hard to be critical of a game like that when you do get that excitement, like I spoke about at the end, because we were all dying for it after what we'd witnessed in the other 3.
What is the Armagh logic, do you think, in the first half?
It's very hard to know. Like, it's just like it's a game of containment. Like, we're just going to play cat and mouse in here and try and see can we frustrate Derry. But Derry are very, very, very comfortable in that environment, and they've probably become one of the best teams in the country at just holding the ball and playing it around until they work a scoring opportunity. Another strange aspect for me is that Brendan Rodgers didn't look like from the TV, it was very hard to know who was actually meant to be picking him up. You know, and obviously Kieran Mackin gets put on him towards the end of the first half, but he'd done a lot of damage in that regards by hitting 1-2. So there was a couple of things from Armagh that I'd look at of why they didn't attack the game a bit more, because Armagh are brilliant at attacking opposition kickouts and winning the ball from there and getting scores off from there. And to sit off them like they did in the first half, I just felt it gave Derry a platform, especially Like, to me, if Armagh played the last 5 minutes of the first half, if they played that for the whole first half, they could have actually gone in 4 or 5 in front at half time.
There does, at times in Ulster football in particular, and in finals in particular over the last couple of years, seem to be that policy that you're not so sure about, of just staying in the game. Just like, once we're within a point or two, let's not push it. And even on Derry's part, it's like, we're back to 1 point, let's push it again, and then put the handbrake up again. It's almost as if, in a way, they're both waiting for the last 15 minutes, and then maybe we'll go for it. But there's no need to take any risks whatsoever and try and win a game early.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially when you get to a final, because if you look at Tyrone Monaghan, for example, earlier on in the year, and even Derry against Monaghan, they had a lot of strong elements of both teams really just going for it and attacking each other and attacking the game, but it comes to the final, then very similar, like I mentioned, to the Ulster final last year, Derry, Donegal, where it's just so cagey, and it's almost like no one wants to make a mistake. And you mentioned there, just stay in the game, don't give the opposition anything, and we'll try and win this in the last 10 minutes rather than going after it early, like I feel Armagh could have yesterday with that wind at the back especially.
How damaging is this one for McGeeney, who has been there now for 9 years, never won silverware? There's a fair chance you would think Armagh will exit the championship quarter-final territory. Just feels like that's about where they are. And so an Ulster title, which still has real credibility and real currency, an Ulster title, a first in 15 years, would have put such a sheen on the season and the direction in which they're going. Whereas now it's yet another year of just bumping their head against that ceiling and not making the breakthrough in Ulster.
Yeah, I think they'll be good at today, Joe. I think they really will be. And you mentioned McGeeney there, him especially. He knows he was under pressure. They needed that Ulster title more than Derry did yesterday. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think how we look back on it, Joe, will all depend on how they do. Okay, yeah. So we're kind of saying, okay, it could be a quarter-final exit or something like that. If they do bounce back from this and go deep into the championship, get to a semi-final or even an All-Ireland final, which may be unlikely, but you just don't know how this championship's going to play out. Then only then we might be able to have a proper look back at and about what we think about losing an Ulster final. But I think they'll be good at it, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. I think McGeeney needed to win that.
Yeah. Listen, semi-final, final, all bets are off. It's a great season, hands down.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it'll just feel, it could have been. It could have been. And so
they're so close, Joe. When you look at penalties again, there were then penalties of getting to a semi-final last year against Derry. And they could have well bet Derry in a semi-final last year, they get that. So look at it, such fine margins, which we know at top-level sport, such fine margins. But yeah, they'll be absolutely good at it.
And interestingly, McGeeney was saying afterwards, they have practiced penalties plenty since the defeat last year. They were acutely aware that this is how games end now. The quality of the penalties was actually very high. There were good saves to very decent penalties, and then even you take the winning penalty and Conor Glass's penalty, this is roof of the net stuff. So it didn't strike you as 10 lads going, holy moly, I haven't hit one of these since my younger years, let's see what happens. They look like two teams who practiced.
Oh, for sure. You'd have to assume everyone is doing it now, Joe, with what's coming down the line, especially. It's the most surprising thing about the penalties for me was Rian O'Neill's, someone who you'd almost put your house on. I thought his was actually the poorest of the lot. I think he was first up for Armagh, and it almost set a pattern for them throughout the penalties. Got a bit of confidence up on Noran Lynch as well, and he'd be really disappointed, with his one, I think. But yeah, overall, you'd have to say the quality really good. I think certainly Conor Glasses and Kieran McFaul's one to win it as well were of particularly good quality.
To rub salt into the wounds when it's such a tight contest, the Brendan Rodgers goal from the Armagh point of view is an absolute shocker. And Ethan Rafferty's 2 points were phenomenal, and they're almost a bit like if Aidan O'Shea scores or Kieran Donaghy scores, they're almost worth 1.5 points in terms of morale. So two amazing scores, but to come off your line when the ball's dropping maybe 10-12 metres from goal, and then to hesitate halfway through and then to back off. I mean, if you're coming, keep coming. And nobody got up with Rodgers. It's a great finish in some ways. Like, that's a difficult thing, a ball coming down to get a fist to it. Rodgers never took his eye off the ball. But in a game where there was only ever going to be a point or two maximum in it, Armagh never actually closed that gap. That in some ways, they were always chasing that until the very end.
Yeah, it was. It was the critical score of the game, really. And obviously came at a stage where in the first 10 minutes of the game, Derry playing with the breeze, and that gave them a real platform, really, just to hold on for the rest of that half playing against the breeze. And, you know, when you're watching that back, especially live, you're just watching referee come and you're just assuming, because you can tell it's dropping short, it's dropping well short, that he's going to stop. And eventually by the time he does stop, it's too late and he's way off his line. Armagh will probably look at, you know, Brendan Rodgers should have been blocked out as well. There's no way that he should have got a free run at that from where he was coming from as well. There should have been an Armagh player coming to meet him and stopping that run in as well. But such a mixed day for Raftery. Like, as a goalkeeper, ever had a madder day in an Ulster final. 2 massive scores, 2 wides, at fault for the goal, saves the penalty, misses the penalty, like bizarre stuff.
It's changed since your day, hasn't it?
Oh, stop. Yeah. It's getting ridiculous now.
Extra time's going to haunt them as well. Armagh 1 point against 14 men in extra time. Yeah. That's another thing I think they'll look at today for sure. That 7 or 8 minute period, you know, it just had a couple of more opportunities that they couldn't take if they go in 3 up at half time. Granted, Joe, they still are 2 up with 3 to go. You know, they do get themselves actually into a really strong position in the second half of extra time that they just let slip and they just let go. And there was a big moment. The McGuigan free is a huge moment for me that levels it with about 2 minutes to go, because Rian O'Neill, that just lost his composure, just lost his discipline. He fouls McGuigan. It's about 10 or 15 metres out from the 45. It's not within kicking range, and he gets into a bit of a wrestling match or grapple with them, and David Goff brings it in, and it's within kicking range. And it's a super by McGuigan, but these are all the small things that add up, Joe. These are all the things they'll be looking at today and in the review during the week of how they let that game slip. No, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a killer, because the kick was completely out of range. It was not on, and at that stage it would have been very difficult for Derry to find the time to build a score and a bit of wrestling. And I thought Goff was quick enough to move it forward as well. I think you'd be disappointed if you were O'Neill. You would have said, "Oh, come on, look, there's that bit of handbags after most fouls." No.
Yeah. Look, I suppose you can. If you're Derry, you're probably wondering, is the Stephen Campbell one a free as well? So maybe over the course I think Goff had a really good game yesterday, but I think both of them, I think you're right. Did O'Neill did a huge pile to get it moved in? I don't think he did, but yeah, maybe there was enough there. But I think the Stephen Campbell free the free in that levels it at the end, I think that's on the soft side as well, for sure.
You mentioned Campbell, and sorry, I didn't get the memo. We all call him Soupy now, do we? Is this just? He's still Stephen Campbell to me. I can't shake that yet.
If you're Ger Cannon and Martin Morrissey, maybe, yeah.
Okay, so Soupy it is. In fairness, he would run with the ball, and he took the game to Derry a bit more. And you did look at him and say a little bit more of that, because he was making inroads. You know, someone coming at you with a bit of pace and a bit of incisiveness goes a long way.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that they held him to come on. I thought he was one of Armagh's best players last year, to be honest. I thought he was superb. Had a brilliant league, so I don't know, was there an injury there or something, but his directness, the score he kicks off his left, Joe, where he just comes through the middle, breaks a line, attacks that Derry defence and kicks it over his left forward. It's probably one of the best scores of the game, and it's something really Armagh were lacking an awful lot in the game. So yeah, I think they'll look back to see if he was there in the first half, and could he have brought that energy to the game in the first half when they had the breeze as well, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but he's a really, really good player, Joe, yeah.
On the quality point, so I totally see where you're coming from with respect to Armagh maybe not taking the game enough to Derry, but I still thought within the game, the handling skills in the main, I saw them criticised a touch, maybe it was in the Sunday game last night. I still thought there was a high level of skill. Thought a lot of the kicking was good. You think of McGuigan's free to level it, which we've just mentioned. I mean, that's still a pressure kick, and he sails it over. And some of McGuigan's passing, foot passing, was a joy to behold. Rian O'Neill, a kick under pressure to take the game to penalties, delivers. And I have to say, when Derry were chasing the game and clock right against them, it's one thing keeping possession in the first 3 minutes of the game and working a score. They did not kick that ball in. Like, it was composure and possession, and we're going to work a score right at the death when they were behind. And that's like a lot of very impressive aspects here to the coaching that's going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so there were some really good aspects in that. I suppose when I look at the quality of it, if I'm looking at that game, would that game win an All-Ireland semi-final? Would that type of form? I don't think it would. Right. I think a Kerry or a Dublin or someone would look after Derry or Armagh playing that style of play and playing that quality that was played yesterday. Granted, I know it's an Ulster final, and when two teams like that play each other, it almost takes on a life of its own, and the way both teams set up and play against each other. But yeah, of course, there was a really good aspects, and I think certainly from half-time on, things proved dramatically in that regards, and there were some super scores, as you mentioned. But I think overall, I wouldn't say it was a hugely, quality or entertaining game in terms of quality.
And how would you see like a Kerry or a Dublin, for instance, taking care of business against Armagh or Derry, like pretty comfortably, and would dominate possession, or would score freely, or would be able to stop them from scoring? Like, where is the gap?
I don't think Kerry, if you look at Kerry and if you look at Dublin, one thing they're really good at is pushing up on opposition kickouts and trying to put you under pressure. So I think that's one spot straight away. And there's no way they would have been letting Oran Lynch clip out short kickouts and Derry to hold the ball for 3 or 4 minutes. And I think that alone puts you under pressure, because it doesn't give you a platform to start easy attacks from the back. So I think that's one aspect. I think, so much more attacking threats from both Dublin and Kerry to look after them, maybe what both teams had to face yesterday. So I think there's a couple of things there that the bigger teams, I think, may be able to face or deal with a lot better later in the championship.
Yes, that's a great point. And Louth found out all about Dublin's press yesterday, which we'll come to in a second. So Derry with 70% possession in the first half, you put that very much at the door of Armagh, as opposed to Derry are so good in possession.
Oh yeah, Joe. Like they were. I think it came up on the TV at one stage. The top 3 boys in possession after about 20, 25, 30 minutes were Niall McCluster and Oran Lynch. Your goalkeeper and your cornerback. They had over 20 possessions each, because literally they're strolling out of fence with the ball. I don't know how many times Oran Lynch actually got the ball and he could take solo standing up, and just hand passed across to someone else. So yeah, that's why I just couldn't understand why Armagh just weren't bringing a bit more chaos to it, and putting them under pressure, because Derry are so comfortable in that scenario. But what you saw last year with Galway in the semi-final, especially with Dublin in the league final, when you don't allow them that time to build up slow attacks and you don't give them ample opportunities to do that, then they do, they can be got at. I think the evidence is there on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Would McGeeney have felt perhaps we mightn't be able to press them sufficiently and they'll beat the press and we'll be exposed for goals, and let's just keep this tight as a final? Is that what he's thinking?
Yeah, there is a bit of that in it, I suppose. And if you look at the way Derry ran through Monaghan in particular, maybe he looked at that and that kind of spooked him a small bit. But I think Armagh are a better team than Monaghan, or in a better place than Monaghan, and have more areas where they could have hurt Derry if they really attacked them and shown a bit more, I suppose it's hard to say, but showed a bit more ambition.
Yeah, bravery.
To go after the game. Bravery, yeah, rather than just stay in the game. I think if they went at Derry from the start, they could, like I said earlier on, with that breeze at the back, they could have been 4 or 5 up at half time. And
you think that's where the game is at now, with your point about Derry having legs to run through like they did against Monaghan, notwithstanding. The game for you at the real top level in Croke Park, when we get to the business end, it's pressure high up the pitch.
Exactly, yeah. When it comes to it later on down the line, you watch a Dublin, you watch a Kerry, you watch a Mayo if they're there, you watch how high they'll press up on opposition and put them under pressure. Don't let them build attacks. And I think that's what the likes of a Derry might come unstuck further down the line.
Okay. So I'm imagining the likes of Kerry and even Mayo and Dublin and Galway, like they're just waking up, they're having a stretch in bed, they're nice and relaxed. And the likes of Armagh and Derry are bloodied and battered, and they're coming in from a long workout. And Lord knows where Tyrone are. Of the Ulster counties, if your life depended on it in the morning in a big game at Croke Park, who are you sending out to take on Dublin or Kerry and save your life?
I'd probably say Tyrone, Joe. And I know Paul Flynn said something last night similar in the Sunday game. I think it's Tyrone. If you look at Derry against Dublin this year in the league final, that's pretty much how they're going to set up against Derry or against Dublin later on in the championship. And you saw how easy Dublin, 4 goals. Okay, granted it's 4-6, but I think Dublin will be a completely different team later on in the championship. I still put my hat in Tyrone just because they've been there and done that in late stages of the championships. If they get themselves together, which I think they have, to be fair, I think they still are a threat. I think of all the Ulster teams there at the minute, and it'll be very, very interesting, Joe, if it does happen to be them, if Derry fell off a cliff and if Armagh fell off a cliff and it was Tyrone that pushed hard for an Ireland final, then it just completely throws, not that it hasn't done already, but the provincial champion is almost out the window.
So 21-point winning margin for Dublin against Louth. I, I don't really know what to say. Like, what?
Yeah. Is there any point in going there?
You tell me. So you put yourself back in the Mayo camp and you watch that. You sit down to watch that Leinster football final, and I'm sure you might keep a close eye on the man you're likely to be marking down the line for little gives and tells and tendencies. But that aside, in broad terms, what would you take away from Dublin's performance?
Just that bit of ruthlessness, I'd say, up front. And the fact that they really are looking to pull the trigger and go for goals. I think that's very obvious. And I know I mentioned this a while ago, Joe, about that.
This dates back to Derry away, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I keep mentioning it, Joe, but they do seem like they're racking up the goals since then. 4 against Derry in the league final, 5 the first day out against Laois. Okay, granted they don't get one against Kildare, but 5 again yesterday. So there has to be something in it for me. I'll be interested to see does this pattern continue, but I probably take that. The fact that they're probably kicking the ball a small bit more. Granted, they're getting loads of time on the ball and loads of opportunities to do that. But O'Connell looks sharp to me again. Colm Costello's moving well. I mentioned a while back too, Gord, about Brian Howard. What's kind of happened to him. Good to see him back in the squad. And I think if you're looking at that Dublin team yesterday, the only one they're really missing that you say might come back in there from a starting point of view if everyone is fit is Michael Fitzsimons. Okay. So I think overall, if you're looking for Dublin, you think, yeah, they're looking pretty good.
How does Jack McCaffrey look to your eye, Colm?
I thought he looked really good until he went off. Like a couple of times, he broke the line in the first half. Did he kick 2 scores in that first half? I think he did. When he breaks the ball, like he's probably the one player still, if he comes onto a ball 50, 60 yards out, it's a goal chance because he's just electric. He'd just break a line. The probably one worrying aspect you've had if you're Dessie Farrell, I don't know why he went off yesterday. I presume it was a precautionary. He came back, I think, against Cork in the league, and we didn't see him for a few weeks. He got injured again. He's not been able to sustain a period of time where he's getting a run of games together, and that may be a concern for Dessie Farrell with just the amount of games that's coming up down the line. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think when he plays, he looks really good, to be fair.
Louth, in fairness, I mean, it's a strange thing to say perhaps after 21-point defeat. They certainly did not disgrace themselves and had a very good start to the game, and it wasn't, Dublin absorbed it more than quashed it, and the goal happened, and then Dublin did seem to go into overdrive. And Mickey Hart said afterwards, let's not let this ruin our season. So they go into the All-Ireland series now. It was very striking reading a piece yesterday in the Sunday Independent. Dermot Crowe had gone behind the scenes in a bid to figure out what's Mickey Hart done here, and he chatted to Peter Fitzpatrick, the chairman, and various other people around the camp, and it's amazing, like, the low-hanging fruit that still exists when it comes to high performance, even at inter-county level. Like, I think at times on the outside we might be exaggerating just how well things are being done in lots of counties. So just to give you an example of things Hart changed, small things like trainings at 7:30, Mickey Hart there at 3:00 was one of the points. He makes sure, previously at the Centre of Excellence, the lights were switched on for training maybe 15 minutes before, but now they're on 90 minutes before. He wants the place illuminated and alive for players arriving. They knocked down an internal wall to make a dining area because they want to improve nutrition dramatically. Fitness now run by Kieran Solon. That now runs 12 months a year, so players still meet up to do supervised weekly sessions when the season is over. And I mean, again, as to the extent to which it changes anything, Hart observed that the training field was very exposed to the elements, so akin to what he did up in Tyrone. He got a bunch of trees planted either end of the pitch to stop the wind coming in as much. The point was made about his aura, and so there was plenty of time over previous years, it was said in the piece, where there might be 12 players at training on a given night, maybe 16 the Thursday, back to 12 on the Tuesday, whereas with Hart there, everybody is there and they're there early. So it's all very admirable, and it's, it's to his credit, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like things were, they weren't shooting the lights out previous to that then.
Oh, yeah, well, look, at all these things make a difference, Joe, of course. Just general standards and trying to create that high-performance environment that Mickey Hart would have been so used to, obviously, in Tyrone with his huge experience, and Gavin Devlin as well. So, yeah, these things matter, of course. And But look at the gap that's there is just to a likes of what Dublin for Louth. Like where Louth have come from, you said it, they were Division 4 when Mickey Hart took them over. You know, they're jumping through the divisions. Like the danger then when you jump through the divisions and you get a couple of wins in the championship that you just come up against. And Sligo experienced this as well in the kind of final, and obviously Clare in the Munster final. Your reward as a weaker county, if you do get to provincial final, is just to meet one of the big boys and get an absolute clipping. You know, but the big thing for Louth is how they can respond to this, you know, because they've got a tough enough group in Kerry, Mayo and Cork, you know what I mean? So if they were to take a couple of beatings in that as well, look, they'll fancy their chances against Cork, absolutely, but Kerry and Mayo are obviously two big ones for them as well. But, you know, if they can, you know, get a win in there against Louth and against Cork and two decent performances, I think Mickey Hart look back at a fairly good year. And finishing third in Division 2, in fairness, Joe, is a huge achievement from where they came from.
No, it's brilliant, and it's to his credit and the players' credit. Again, I just wonder if we've maybe hyped up how much work is being done in lots of counties around the country. I read that and I thought, none of this is, you know, why wasn't this being done 10 years ago? None of this is way out of the curve. It's actually quite basic. And it was funny, Pat Gilroy spoke to Malachy Clerkin over the weekend in the Irish Times, and so he's in helping out with Desi a bit now, and he was saying, man, like, you thought when I was in charge of Dublin that we were pushing the envelope. He's like, it's a different country now in terms of fitness and commitment. And he was saying the relevance to the conversation we were just having. He was saying that Dublin always knew against most of the counties, or a lot of the counties, that they were fitter than them. And so even if they're putting it up to us, we know with 10, 15 minutes to go, we'll run out comfortable winners. And you kind of think, well, what's going on in these other counties half the time? Why aren't they raising standards? Like, there's a lot more that can be done. And again, we might just overestimate how well lots of counties are preparing.
I'd say that's physically it, Joe, until you go into a setup and you dig deep into it and you see lads' habits away from the training field even, you know, maybe that's a lot to do with it as well. Why the fitness or the whatever isn't there to compete. But look, you saw the gap, Joe, that's there. It's just by putting the lights on a training ground or doing a couple of small things that's mentioned there, that's not going to close the gap on the likes of Dublin, because they're streets and light years ahead of that, unfortunately. So but look, you have to start somewhere. Everyone needs to start somewhere. And for Louth, like I said, they're still, you know, are going places. It's other counties, I suppose, in Leinster, and you'd look at the likes of maybe Meath and to maybe certain extent Kildare and Laois and these boys. Why haven't they progressed over the years? What kind of structures do they have, or what kind of, you know, is there such thing as a high performance setup in them counties? You'd probably question that as well. Yeah.
A last one, and sorry to put you on the spot. When you think of the start of your career versus the end and high performance, what's the most glaring example of something that you weren't doing or were doing? Maybe you were out on the lash every weekend, I don't know. What's the biggest change in terms of high performance that would have happened, say, in the Mayo camp, say from when you went in to the end? Was it the weight training? Was it the aerobic training? Was it diet? What was the big, like, oh my God, I can't believe we used to do that when I first started playing for Mayo?
I'll give you one very basic example, Joe. My first year in Mayo, 2008, I still remember we got like strength tested, or your S&C tested in like late November 2007. And we received a programme maybe about a week later, and that's the last we ever heard anything about the programme. There was no mention of it for the rest of the year. There was no group gym sessions. There was no nothing. And it was basically forgotten about. And if you were doing it, you were doing it. If you weren't, you weren't. There was never a mention of it. You fast forward that, you know, the way we finished up with Mayo, the way most, I presume every county is now, where you have it's basically part of your weekly routine, your two or three gym sessions or S&C. And so a lot of the time it's actually built into your training session as well. So you might have a training session on a Tuesday night and you're on the pitch for an hour and you're up in the gym for the last half an hour of that session. You know, that's kind of the difference of where it's gone to on a basic level, I suppose.
Right, okay. And individually tailored.
Of course, yeah. And that's the big thing about it. That programme we all received back in 2008 was the same programme for everyone else. You know, everyone was doing the same exercises where they were, regardless of where they were at in their development, or if they were able to do them or not, and regards, you know, where it went to after that, where it was all, as you said, individualised. Yeah, different level.
Interesting. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers. Colm Boyle with us there, a four-time Ulster winner with Mayo. Gaelic football on Off the Ball is in partnership as well with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship, and you can check out #TheToughest for more.